You press the button. Nothing happens. You press it again. Harder this time. Still nothing. After a while, you stop trying. Not because the button is broken, but because something inside you quietly decided it's pointless. That moment right there is where learned helplessness begins. And it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel dramatic. It feels logical. That's what makes it dangerous. A few decades ago, a series of experiments changed how psychologists understood human behavior. Not because they revealed something new, but because they exposed something we didn't want to admit. Subjects were placed in situations where they experienced discomfort, something unpleasant, but not life-threatening. At first, they tried to escape. They struggled. They resisted. But over time, something shifted. They stopped trying. Even when the door was opened. Even when escape was obvious. Even when all it took was a single step. They stayed. Not trapped. Just done. Here's the part that matters right now. You don't need extreme conditions to trigger this. You just need repetition. Small failures. Unpredictable outcomes. Effort that doesn't seem to pay off. Again. And again. And again. Eventually, your brain starts running a quiet calculation. Why bother? And once that calculation feels true, it spreads. It starts in one area. Maybe school. You study hard. The results don't match. You try again. Same outcome. So you adjust your effort. Less energy. Less risk. Then something subtle happens. That mindset leaks. Into relationships. Into work. Into opportunities you haven't even tried yet. You begin to expect failure before anything begins. Not consciously. Just automatically. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Learned helplessness doesn't always look like giving up. Sometimes, it looks like being busy. You still show up. You still go through the motions. But you've quietly stopped believing your actions matter. You're not trying to win anymore. You're trying to avoid losing. That's a very different game. There's a strange irony here. The brain isn't being weak. It's being efficient. From a survival standpoint, it's doing exactly what it's designed to do. It's conserving energy. If repeated effort leads to pain or no reward, the brain adapts by reducing effort. No wasted energy. No unnecessary risk. On paper, that's smart. In real life, it can trap you. Because the environment may have changed. But your internal model hasn't. Think about that for a second. You could be standing in front of an open door. And still feel trapped. Not because you can't leave. But because, at some point, you learned that leaving doesn't work. And your brain hasn't updated that belief. Now zoom out. This isn't just personal. This scales. Entire groups, workplaces, even societies can drift into this pattern. When systems feel unpredictable. When effort doesn't clearly connect to outcome. When people feel like they have no real control. Engagement drops. Initiative disappears. People comply. They don't challenge. Not because they agree. But because they've learned it won't matter. And here's where the darker psychology begins. Because once someone enters that state, they become easier to manage. Easier to influence. Easier to keep exactly where they are. No force required. Just consistency. Consistent signals that effort doesn't change anything. That's enough. Now, here's the twist most people miss. Learned helplessness doesn't always come from failure. Sometimes, it comes from unpredictability. If rewards and outcomes feel random, sometimes you succeed, sometimes you don't, with no clear reason, the brain struggles to find patterns. And when it can't find patterns, it stops trying to predict. And when it stops trying to predict, it stops trying to act. Because action without predictability feels like chaos. And the brain hates chaos. There's also a time factor. This doesn't happen overnight. It builds quietly. Day by day. Moment by moment. Tiny signals stacking up. That didn't work. That didn't change anything. That wasn't worth it. Until one day, without realizing it, you hesitate before even starting. That hesitation is the signal. Not fear. Not laziness. A learned expectation. And once that expectation is in place, it starts shaping reality. You avoid risks, so you see fewer successes. You reduce effort, so results shrink. You disengage, so opportunities pass unnoticed. And every one of those outcomes reinforces the original belief. It becomes self-confirming. A closed loop. Here's something almost absurd. If you take someone in that state and give them control again, real, clear, consistent control, they don't immediately use it. At first, they hesitate. They test it. Slowly. Cautiously. As if waiting for the system to betray them again. Because from their perspective, that's what systems do. And that hesitation can last longer than the original experience that created it. Think about that. A temporary environment can create a long-term mental model. The situation ends. But the behavior stays. Now bring it back to you. Not in a dramatic way. Just quietly. Where in your life have you stopped trying, not because you can't, but because at some point it didn't work? Where have you accepted limits that may no longer exist? And more importantly, how would you even know the difference? Because that's the real problem with learned helplessness. It doesn't feel like giving up. It feels like seeing reality clearly. And if your perception feels accurate, why would you question it? So you press the button once. Nothing happens. You press it again. Still nothing. At some point, you stop. The question isn't why you stopped. The question is, if the button started working again tomorrow, would you even think to try?